like to introduce Julian Smith from Blockfreight. He's flown up here from Sydney, Melbourne, sorry, got it wrong. But and he's one of the blockchain startups that we've been talking about.
So Blockfreight, we're trying to create a blockchain-based solution for this industry. So because blockchains have been so well covered earlier during the day, you'll be pleased to know I've excised all of the 101, what is a blockchain. So without further ado, here's the 24th of November. So I'd certainly like to thank Hans and Chain of Things and our hosts here at Infinity for putting this presentation together. It's a fantastic venue, and it's a privilege to present the project that we're working on. So when internally we think about Blockfreight and what we're building, we feel that we're building a blockchain that's specific for global freight. So we are creating something that allows container freight primarily, but not exclusively. As many of you know, bill of lading applies to bulk goods and other types of international commodities. To interface to smart contracts on an underlying blockchain. But as one of the presentations went into earlier, the form of consensus that is created through a consortium is probably most apt or most applicable to realising something such as this project at scale. So to that end, the main takeaway that I'm here today is not so much about the technology as it is an open invitation to participate in setting rules of governance, frameworks and standards for what Blockfreight should become. What we hope to have through that dialogue and through that collaboration is the world's safest network for cargo freight. To ensure that the code base that we're operating around is open source and has the contribution of its members, its users, its customers, that this network should be something which can be relied upon for the settlement of trade. So the model that we propose is one where there is a token. That token is a Blockfreight token. It's similar in nature to a ticket for a theatre. If you're going to buy a movie ticket, you would purchase it. On going to see the movie, you would present it to the usher, they would tear it, you would get entry into the cinema and watch a film. In a very similar way, the Blockfreight token is the right to redeem an entry into the blockchain. So that is essentially a network fee and what's known as an anti-spam measure. So coupled to the use of the token, you announce the details of your transaction to the validators on the network, and that will essentially be bill of lading style data, plus prospectively some additional information about smart contracts, and some additional information that's on the slide coming up. And that transaction is then verified by members of the consortium's servers that are running and verifying transactions that come in. If anyone would like more technical details about this, by all means come and have a chat later about that. So our mission at Blockfreight is building a network that has 360 million containers on network by the year 2020. We are looking to create a global blockchain for freight. So why might people within the industry, our industry, care to deal with a blockchain at all? We feel that the opportunity to eliminate costs that arise around the standard demurrage, withholding, detention is key. To eliminate opportunities for fraud, such as duplication or transforming data, or retrospectively and retroactively creating data to support insurance claims and the like. One nice idea is that an insurer might say, do you have a Blockfreight transaction for your cargo? If you do, your premium is lower. If you don't, well, our risk is higher and consequently it'll be more expensive. And to streamline compliance, international trade regulations, an example being verified gross mass, which came into effect this year. To that end, the Blockfreight Consortium is the governance body that everyone in this room and everyone outside of this room as well, that has an interest in the industry, is invited to join and help shape the direction of this network. I'm pleased to announce today, here for the first time, that Reed Transport International, or MTI, is now a member of the Blockfreight Consortium. They are using Blockfreight for their VGM, verified gross mass. We'll work together on that in the future and have some future announcements about how it all works out and stuff. So, if you are interested in working with us, please go to our website, blockfreight.com/EOI, expression of interest, and say, yes, I'm interested in working, and we can strike up a dialogue. And I thank you for your time and attention. I'm more than happy to take questions.
What's your revenue?
So the revenue model is that the tokens are $1 each. So a token costs $1 to be purchased. That is the cost of putting a EVL into the network. That is the answer to that. So that's where the revenue for the company is generated at scale. Yes. Then the amount that you sold it to someone else for higher is your profit margin on selling that. Because of the nature of tokens on Bitcoin, so so I didn't do technical, but this is a technical question. So it's a counterparty token. So I have no ability, anyone has no ability to prevent you from doing that. And it's similar that, say, the company that makes Pokemon is the word I'm looking for.
So, do you mind just
Pokemon cards
repeating
can't
the
stop you
question?
reselling.
We couldn't hear the question in the back, so do you mind just repeating the question? Thanks.
That's right, that's how I should do these things. So the question is, if somebody purchases a token and sells it to somebody else for a higher price, then what happens? My answer to that is the amount between what you purchased it for and what you sold it for is your profit margin, less your costs of marketing the token. And then I think the second question is, so you don't prevent people selling the tokens. To which my answer is, I can't prevent, and no one can prevent, the tokens being sold. They are in and of themselves a transferable asset.
Are the tokens meant to be available to anyone and everyone, or only members of the consortium?
So the question is, are the tokens available to anyone and everyone? And the answer to that question is yes. Blockfreight is creating an open network for the free trade of physical goods. So that means that the cost of entry to participating on the demand side of global trade is made more fluid through the introduction of this network. However, the validators that are parties to the actual provision of supply chain services identified known parties and are part of the consortium model rule set. So that's a less open participation.
You mentioned $360 million of containers, but does it include upon the type of container or only ocean going? So the World Shipping Council estimated at 34 million the number of shipments worldwide.
So The question pertains to data that our internal mission is 360 million containers on network, and you're saying that only 10% of that volume annually trades between.
No, it exists. There is 4 million containers worldwide.
So you're saying that.
260 million. Do they include all the type of containers? Or
So I don't have enough years to meet our mission. Is essentially what we're saying.
What's the estimate? What does it include in terms of container? Does it include less container load parcels? Do you have?
So the engineering of that internal mission is that the data we were working with tells us that there are 360 billion container movements annually.
Movements.
Yes.
Okay.
And the language that I'm using is ambiguous because 360 billion containers on network could arguably be a cumulative number from day 0 through to 2020, and we could still meet our target, and then we could have our cake day. Or it could be that we start hitting our internal mission annually, in which case we could go, hey, we're doing that every year. That's great.
Okay, the question whether you include parcels or less container load in your systems.
Sorry, Benoit, may I have you repeat the question?
Do you include less parcels under in your model or not?
So I'm not a lawyer. I'm an applications developer and graphic designer. But my understanding of why we have bills of lading is traditionally because you're moving physical goods across national boundaries, and where you would have the receiver of the goods tend to have their court system prefer their own national citizens' interests, and the seller or the manufacturer would have their own court system in their country favour their own companies. The reason we have these bills of lading is essentially to create a private law system whereby there is arbitration established and a set of commercial code, and then the reputation that people establish by trading is the one which means that people are willing to trade with them more or less. So what this network is trying to do is embody that sense of private treaty law and arbitration in a network model, reflected in a network model, rather than have this encroachment of territorial or statute land-based law start to repeal the laws of the sea. There is this sort of value to the openness of trade that has benefited humanity, and we want to, I guess, have a technology that enshrines that concept and doctrine moving forward, as opposed to try and make the laws of the land apply to the ocean as well, at a high level. I'm not sure if that answers the question, though. So the reason, so coming back to the transaction around whether it's a container or something else, or whether it's parcels, if a parcel, if it's something that's physically smaller, it still merits a specific BL, a specific sort of transfer of title for that one object. If it's a gem or a ruby or a gold bar and it's in a suitcase, it doesn't need to be in a shipping container per se. Although a standard Blockfreight transaction has provision for container ID, sealed number, things like that. Verified gross mass. Now. So we're building on a technology for the consensus that's called Tendermint. Tendermint's an open source product that comes out of the Bitcoin world. Bitcoin, it's a consensus algorithm without mining. It both lends itself well to this application, but Blockfreight is the application that sits around and defines what is a valid and invalid transaction. So that code is being written. The delivery should be first public exposure by February of next year. We're seeking to operate as a commercial network from April of next year.
And you get the vetting process of your members?
Yes. By inviting them to engage in an email dialogue where people describe why they're interested, and naturally enough there will be a financial contribution that members will need to provide to create the structure. We will publish our ideas around what that looks like and moderate it with respect to the feedback that we get.
Yeah. Hi. You described the beginning of the system so that you had the token your system, and then settlement, the freight settlement can be made through the block freight.
No, we do not do settlement. So things like insurance, trade finance, lowest cost path, ad hoc routing, Internet of Things, these are all applications, products and services that can be built on top of block freight as opposed to block freight itself. So if we are essentially building the underlying immutable network for transactions, immutable data store for transactions that is federated among the membership. So assume block freight, and then what could you build with that? What are the specific inefficiencies within your business that you could go after and unlock value around? So we don't solve specific problems such as how and when should someone be paid, but there are companies that are in the previous presentation that are looking specifically at trade finance.
So
And that's good because they will become very good at that.
So essentially, you'd be a database of information, and that's it.
Yes. Yes, the question is essentially we will be a database for information. And yes, it's our hope that the members of the Blockfreight network will each themselves have a full copy of every transaction. Not visibility into every transaction, because again, it's on a needs to know basis. You construct a transaction and then anyone who should see its content is able to, and everyone else is providing the uptime, multi-home data, redundancy, etc.
Yeah, okay, so in some senses, you're not aiming to do away with paper transactions, or there will still be bills of lading that can be negotiated and paid that will be outside of this.
So the question is, we're not trying to do away with bills of lading. The answer to that question is that because the transaction is inherently based on a bill of lading, you can take the data of the bill of lading and...
You can take the data, but you just have the data. You're not going to... the document itself is a very important legal instrument. I'm a lawyer, so I'm asking a question from a legal perspective. It's a very important legal instrument. That piece of paper.
So the fusion of toner onto parchment is in and of itself an act which is special.
It is special.
So the good news is that if you are still able to use fusion toner to set parchment of cotton or bamboo fiber or plantation wood chip origin, and you can, this network is fully backwards compatible to paper. Nothing prevents taking the data and printing it and applying a chalk or a seal. I just argue that a private key is, or a digital key, applied cryptography is less counterfeit prone than a chalk.
I'm not, in some sense, I'm not debating with you about the value of what you're doing.
I'm interested in the senses in which you are debating what we're doing, because I always look to self-reflect on whether I should be doing this.
The reason the bill of lading is important is because the law says it's important. There are special acts in most jurisdictions that say this is an important piece of document. Why is this important? Because this document represents the goods. If you hold that document, you are the owner of the goods.
Yes.
Right. And
Yes.
I can give that document to somebody else.
Yes.
And that other person then is the owner of the goods.
Yes.
There is no need for me to do anything in any database.
Yes.
Right? That person holds the document.
Yeah.
Now the issue
Yes.
is for digitization is that there is no provision, as I was saying earlier, there is no provision at law
Yes.
that allows you to do that. That's why the paper is still there.
So if I can paraphrase the question from the statement, it would be that the trouble with all of these digital representations is they lack the enforcement provisions in the courts in a country.
In any country.
So that, while true, doesn't really go to the heart of what law, or LORE, LAW, is, and what commercial practice is. So if we're supra-jurisdictional, if we are trading because we are profit-seeking individuals, which we ought to be, then it's possible to create for ourselves a framework of governance as opposed to government, which allows for the trade to be decided between peers. If there's a set of conditions in contract, like ICC, for if this happens, then this, and if we can't agree, we go to arbitration, and then the decision of the arbitration body, even if it's a private one, owned by the members of Blockfreight, will be binding. And then if a member repudiates the ruling of that private court, their reputation suffers the damage. So you can have short-term benefit at the expense of the long-term growth that comes on trade and good dealings. I actually have a lot more faith in the capacity of merchants and humans to create for themselves a workable framework using technology that is going to be cheaper than statute-based law and land-based court solutions, which, in my opinion, are long and expensive and antiquated. Yes?
Sorry, just to play devil's advocate, what are the benefits of using blockchain for something like this rather than your traditional centralized database?
So the question is, what are the benefits of using a blockchain as opposed to a centralized database? So, in a way, blockchain is a shared centralized database, or it's a database that replicates among its members. There is a set of APIs. It's an applied cryptographic format. So distributed ledgers. These words are on a spectrum of describing the suite of technologies and tools which are assembled to create products that we see today. Arguably, Bitcoin, digital cryptocurrency, has taken one step further by ensuring that there isn't any reliance on reliability. It really is a best effort network, whereas something like distributed ledgers are just a database, except just a database where all the members have access to it, and just a database where all the members have their own full copy of the database, and just a database where the transactions are grouped and connected so that any variation to the data within it is self-evident, tamper-evident. So it's a tamper-evident database structure that using one set of nomenclature to describe it over another doesn't necessarily yield additional communicative value of saying, oh, it's different from a database like this.
Julian, can I answer your question as well?
Ask or answer?
No, can I answer?
Oh, yeah, please. And there are shorter ways to answer that question.
No, I mean, to simplify it, a blockchain is the evolution of centralized database, right? It's a distributed computing network. So it sort of naturally fits the distributed world, distributed industry, and the way things are going in terms of distributed machine communication. So it's also immutable. So records on it can't be changed. It's right forward. It's secure, and it's an incredible authentication engine. So you can create identity on it for humans, products. We already talked about products and devices.
Yes, because something that I found very interesting, because you said that the transactions would be verified by a fairly limited consortium of sort of trusted.
Yeah, we're looking for 100 foundation members.
Yeah.
So the new numbers would be essentially 100 validators on the network is the kind of spread we're looking for.
But see, that still requires an element of trust, right? So the way Bitcoin works is you trust no one, but just like Mulder, you trust no one.
So the question is that, or the statement is that still requires an element of trust. Could you be more specific, like trusting what?
Well, consortium. So based on I'm not a blockchain expert by any stretch of the imagination, but my understanding of fully sort of the vanilla blockchain network is that you nobody trusts anybody else, but it requires effectively critical mass of people verifying a transaction to, in order, you have to have enough block dependent afterwards.
Answer. They're not all blockchains are alike. Okay, the blockchain you're talking about is a public blockchain, right? Permissionless, right? You don't need permission to join. You just need to be able to download the blockchain, use a wallet. So what he's discussing is a permission blockchain, private blockchain, which sort of
It's a merchant chain, it's a hybrid chain. So as long as you've bought an entry to the chain, you can make an entry. So from the end user side, it's fairly straightforward. But I think your question goes to trusting the other consortium members. Tendermint is the internal consensus mechanic that is employed in Blockfreight. It requires 2/3 of the validators on the network to sign each transaction. So a transaction goes through 3 states. It commences into the network as a candidate transaction, and then it is sent to each validator in the network for verification of its content and that it conforms to whatever rules are in place. If it does conform, if it is a valid transaction, a validator will apply its seal to it. It will sign that, yes, this appears valid to me. So then it has 1 vote, 1 out of 100, and so on and so forth, until it approves 2/3 sign off. So you have to trust, let's say that a transaction that is invalid, is put into the blockchain. The validator that does that has signed that, and that validator has broken consensus, and they are taken out of the network. So it actually has a specific sort of exit event. So there is a set of rules set up in advance to say that when machines behave badly, they are removed from the network.
But I guess you're assuming that they won't collude with one another. The assumption being that the consortium will not collude with one another to behave badly.
So even if 99 of the, let's say it's 100, if 99 machines collude against the rules of the network, they will then have new rules, because that is where now consensus sits. But for the one validator that was adopting the ones that were agreed to, it can't be done stealthily. There's no stealth attack, so the 99 can effectively do that and create a fork, but not in a way that the one that doesn't want to do that will be unaware that it's happened. So the original chain can continue, so you might end up with 2 networks out of such a scenario. And moreover, the participants in the network, running open source code, they have that like real world business level reason to do that. They shouldn't be captive or held hostage to be in the network. If the rules no longer suit them, they should be free to form their own other network.
Who are the languages?
Sorry, just one question at the back. You've had your hand up.
Just one comment that there are actually 2 workarounds for dealing with the paper problem. One is you use a non-negotiable waybill and then make the owner of the waybill whoever the blockchain says is the owner. The other way is to use a negotiable bill of lading, have that bill of lading owned by some corporate entity or like a trust or partnership, and then transfer ownership of the trust or partnership. But the point that I want to make is that it's really, really important when you go to the shipping people, not to scare them. Because they want to see paper, they want to see bills of lading. You have to give them bills of lading, you have to give them paper. You want to make it look as much as possible as a system that they're used to, even if it's a stupid system, because they're going to be scared of anything that's not original. But there are ways of making it look like, there are ways of making it look like you're not using rocket science. I mean, there are legal workarounds to make sure that they get what they get, so they're not scared.
So being an open platform, I think there's probably provision for another company, a startup, to create a user interface or to create specific legal envelopes around this. Those ways of commercializing the network seem valid, but it's outside the scope of what Blockfreight will do itself, but will certainly encourage others to build business models on top of Blockfreight, providing those sorts of solutions. That sounds like integrated solutions provider work. Do you want to do a startup?
No, that's a good product. It's a good product because it feels like you need a bill of lading, you need to pay for that. Now you're always saying network. A simple question is, do we need to have a network? Do we need to have internet to download basically unload a cargo? Maybe there'll be lots of ports where you don't have internet. You keep them.
There is freight forwarders, we don't mention freight forwarders, but they are here and there. They are somehow addressing this issue of being an intermediate between the BCO, the baby cargo owner, and the shipping line. So first, the one that you might scare is not the freight forwarders, and the second thing is there's many transactions and shipments with the bill of lading, and I mentioned it earlier, let's not forget it. The bill of lading is not the way to the must. There is alternative ways. Single bills, telex release, and this is bill of lading are reducing. They are losing ground, really. They are less and less used. So if it's to add more layers and more complicated systems, maybe it's not the
We're certainly not looking to introduce complexity or additional layers. We are trying to provide a base layer that things can be built on, and if there is a feeling from your experience that bills of lading are being obsoleted or sunset in favour of other mechanics, we don't have enough knowledge inside the technology business to be aware of that. That's why we have this conversation. To invite
behind the trust, no one more traders is wrong and open account basis, the trust and receiver. That's what I was mentioning earlier.
I think simplification is a good point. I think user experience is key. And a good example that Paul used earlier with Valero was the boarding pass. Where the boarding pass was originally gone, the actual buying a ticket, to actually now almost being totally electronic. So
yeah. I mean, I purchased a flight here with Bitcoin. I got an email and I showed the counter the Galileo transaction ID. So in some ways, Blockfreight is looking to build what would be considered the Visa network to banking, or the Galileo network to the hotel industry. It's trying to act as something that the industry itself owns and is vested into and has governance over its evolution and direction. So that's essentially the takeaway invitation I'd like to leave with, is to say if any of you have interest in helping us shape the particular form and format of the transactions, taking into account bills of lading perhaps being less useful, or specific concerns about there being paper outs or interfaces, we invite you to get in touch so that we can build a better network that is useful to you. Thank you for your time.